Hello, welcome to APUS History Review number 2, Reconstruction. All right, I'm going to walk you through this kind of quick here. Wait for the smartboard to turn on, but you should be able to see the screen as is. All right, Reconstruction. Please note it's the political and social transformation of the South following the war. It is not the rebuilding of the South. The literal Reconstruction was building the cities that were burned down and things like that. This is more a transformation of the society following the war. Okay. Now, three questions we should consider in Reconstruction, and if there's a DBQ or FRQ on this is probably what it's going to address. All right. First of all, what should we do with the freed slaves? All right. Sherman actually had a plan for that during the Civil War. You remember Sherman having burned Atlanta. His Field Order 15 would have given 40 acres and a mule to all the freed slaves in Georgia and South Carolina, taking the land from the rich white Confederates and redistributing it to the freed slaves. And that does not happen. We'll cover why a little bit later. Number two, what are we going to do with the ex-Confederates? Okay, they've technically committed treason. They've left the country. How are we going to treat these people having left? And then how are we going to readmit the states into the Union? Do you treat them as rebels within a country, or do you treat them as a separate country that has to be readmitted back to the United States? Okay. There's historical problems with Reconstruction. It's the reason probably most of you don't understand it or are not interested in it, or both. There's a lack of a hero. All right, in this, one hero might be Thaddeus Stevens, who was Tommy Lee Jones in the Lincoln movie. There really is no happy ending to Reconstruction. And the historians of the Reconstruction period over time have been very pro-Southern in their views. The movie Birth of a Nation, which actually comes out in 1915 and glorifies the Ku Klux Klan. This will probably be on the exam, just knowing that Birth of a Nation glorifies the Klan. And then the movie Gone with the Wind started painting the Northerners as the villains. It kind of came down and ruined this great Southern society that was trampled by war. All right, here's your successes of Reconstruction. The Freedmen's Bureau, which was established to provide aid to freed slaves, education, monetary payments, land redistribution, things like that. Mostly it was to provide education, though, for them. That did work until Johnson vetoed its extension in 1866, Johnson having took over for the assassinated Lincoln. The 13th Amendment, if you've seen the movie Lincoln, which I keep referencing, if you haven't seen it, go rent it. It's worth watching. Abolish slavery and involuntary servitude. That basically got rid of that for good out of the Constitution. 14th Amendment said all blacks were citizens, okay, no matter if they were born in the United States, or anybody's a citizen if they're born in the United States. That basically trumps the Dred Scott decision, which has said blacks were not citizens and had no right to sue in court. Okay. It also guaranteed you due process of law, that the state, the key thing about the 14th Amendment is it said no state shall deny you due process of law or equal protection under the law. All right. So essentially you have rights. You have rights if you're accused of a crime, and the state has to treat you equally under the law. It was designed to protect blacks and whites. It is 14th Amendment's grown immensely over time. And then 15th Amendment guaranteed the right to vote for African Americans, which you see in the picture here. This painting probably would be in a DBQ, maybe even a multiple choice, where you see the farmer, the city dweller, and the soldier all showing up to cast their first votes under the 15th Amendment. Okay. Also note there were obstacles put into the 15th Amendment, like the poll taxes, literacy tests, etc. All right, here's your failures of Reconstruction. There are no 40 acres and a mule because Johnson pardons all the ex-Confederates. That land cannot be taken from them. Therefore, there's no land to give to the freed slaves. They have no choice but to work for their former masters. The Ku Klux Klan rises in 1866, founded by Nathan Bedford Forrest as a group designed to oppose Republican rule and Reconstruction policies in the South, mostly targeting Republicans and blacks. Okay, it was outlawed in 1871 by the Enforcement Acts passed by the Congress under President Grant. And they're also called the Enforcement Acts or the Ku Klux Klan Act, and that essentially banned the Klan by 1872. They were gone. So they exist for about half of Reconstruction. All right, the Colfax Massacre in Louisiana in 1873, where voted out Southerners had basically overthrown the rightly elected Republicans and black office holders and killed them, and were basically acquitted for their crimes in Louisiana. But it was a pretty bloody massacre. We talked about it in class. Hopefully you still have notes on that. And then the Compromise of 1877, in which you see in this electoral vote here, okay, Samuel Tilden of New York actually won the popular vote, barely, okay, but Rutherford B. Hayes wins the electoral vote by 1 due to the controversy from these 3 Republican states down in the South, which sent in double returns in the electoral votes because they had not been reconstructed yet. So by them sending in double returns, Congress doesn't know who rightfully won. If you look at the other states, you can probably guess it would have been Tilden, the Democrat, but they work out a compromise, all right, where the Republicans get the presidency and Hayes is the winner. Democrats get 1 member of the cabinet and removal of troops in the South, which basically gives the South free reign for the next 100 years or so to enforce its policies in the South. All right. There was radical Reconstruction. Johnson had a plan. Lincoln had a plan called Lincoln Presidential Reconstruction. Johnson continued that. That was more moderate. The the radical Reconstruction was kind of ruined by Andrew Johnson. Johnson called himself the honest yeoman. Remember, yeoman is a poor, small farmer in the South that basically owned an acre and had very few, if any, slaves. But Johnson kind of represented them. He hated the planter class as much as the North did. But Johnson felt the best way to get Reconstruction working would be to pardon all of the white Confederates, all the wealthy landholders. We've already talked about that. His policy also gave a free hand to the South to manage local affairs as they saw fit. So you saw things passed like black codes. Do not confuse black codes with Jim Crow laws. The black codes were more done to restrict the freedom of blacks that they had just won under Reconstruction, or under the 13th Amendment. This basically put in laws like you can't vote if you're a convicted felon. You can't, if you're unemployed, you can't be out and about, okay? And the only way to be defined as having worked was to work for a white person. Okay, so if you weren't working for a white, you weren't allowed on the streets, all right, prohibited them to marry, things like that. Okay, but basically it was designed to keep them on the plantation. And the radicals that led Reconstruction were Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner. Stevens was the biggest proponent of the land redistribution, but they wanted to basically see blacks get a chance and get some equality down in the South. All right. Also, you need to know these terms for Reconstruction. Carpetbaggers, which are Northerners that moved to the South and got elected as Republicans to kind of run the government down there. Scalawags were Southerners that became Republicans. So they were a much bigger trader than the carpetbaggers were. And carpetbaggers were more plentiful. You might see a cartoon of a guy in a carpetbag. It's a Republican moving to the South to take advantage of the political opportunity. A scalawag is somebody that just became a Republican. All right. You also need to know Johnson was impeached. All right. He removes Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, which violated a law called the Tenure of Office Act, which says the president cannot fire a cabinet member that he did not appoint. Stanton obviously appointed by Lincoln. Johnson can't fire him, but he does anyways. The House impeaches him, which says you did something wrong, you violated the law, and then it went to the Senate, where by 1 vote the Senate voted to not remove Johnson from office. So he was impeached like Clinton was, but not removed from office because the Senate did not remove him. No president has ever been removed from office. All right, Grant becomes elected in 1868. He's mired in some controversy and scandals, most notably Credit Mobilier, which actually wasn't attributed to him, but all the profits from the Pacific Railroad that was built went to the railroad's promoters as opposed to the government. The government was supposed to sell this land off and then keep the profits to kind of pay for other things. Instead, it went to the promoters of the railroad. And in the whiskey ring, where there was some bribery of one of the cabinet members by some Indian land agents. So those are 2 corruption things associated with Grant. Okay, Colfax Massacre is basically what happened in Louisiana. This just might be some outside info you throw in. Okay, I'll leave the slide up for a second. Basically, the radical or the Democrats in the South, the former Confederates, killed 105 blacks and 3 whites for trying to hold office after they were elected. And the court case of U.S. versus Cruikshank was one of the first interpreting the 14th Amendments. And this basically overturned the convictions against 2 of the people that orchestrated the Colfax Massacre, 2 Southerners. And the court said the 14th Amendment protected the individuals from the state, not from other individuals. Meaning that the way the court found it is the 14th Amendment says a state cannot take away your rights, but if an individual takes your rights away, the federal government can't prosecute you. It's a state crime, and these guys were found not guilty. All right, so hopefully this helps. I know it was kind of short and quick, but that's probably what we need right about now. Good luck, and hopefully see you at a review soon.